Welcome to the Leadership and Yoga podcast, hosted by me, Shauna Kruger. And on this podcast, I'll be bringing you interviews with exceptional leaders in the yoga world alongside trainings and tips so you can experience true breakthroughs and help others do the same. Leadership and Yoga fam, today we are talking about money. I realized that after nearly 170 episodes, I still had never created an episode specifically on the topic of money. So you're in for a treat today because everything that I've been holding back regarding money is on the line today. And this is one of those episodes that it doesn't happen to me every single time, but there'll be this moment where it's getting close to the Friday release date, which, by the way, is the great thing about getting on a schedule when you are creating something or wanting to share your words or your ideas or your art in any way with the world. It seems like the idea arrives just when you need it most. And this is exactly what happened. On the way home from a hot yoga class last night, I was walking home, not cooling off, by the way, because Austin, it's like 100 degrees even as the sun is setting. So I started to get the burning idea of everything that I wanted to say regarding money and regarding abundance and regarding giving as an actual art form. And I almost could not get home fast enough. I walked in the door in my sweaty clothes and I sat down at my laptop and I wrote for an hour straight. I wrote all of the notes in that exact moment in the order that you're going to hear them. So this one is like hot off some inner workings of my brain. It's not stuff that I've pulled together from different sources and stuff like that and never really integrated myself. This is everything that I have found to be incredibly useful, and I can't wait to share it with you. I'm not here to convince you or to tell you to quit your job and to make money easily following this following pyramid scheme. No, not at all. Honestly, I have super crashed and burned in my boom and bust cycles that I have experienced since quitting my job. And I've shared this many times. I'm happy that my path happened the way that it did, but I believe that I quit very soon. It actually wasn't really the intention to quit. So it's not going to be that kind of an episode, honestly. It's going to be much more of a look into the nature of money and the energy behind money and the energy behind abundance and how is all of this actually being created and what really moves all of these sorts of forces. And it's interesting if right now as you're coming to this episode, no matter what your situation is, when I think back about my situation, if I would have gotten everything that I wanted, if I would have gotten the supposed money, the raise that I wanted and the title change that I wanted, and I've really believed and still do believe that I deserved at that moment when I was working in law firms on the business side of things, if I would have gotten that in that moment, would I have ever really quit? Would I have stepped away? Would I have been so enraged that I turned back to my yoga practice with intensified feelings of, I need to figure all of this out? I don't know, and if I would have gotten everything that I wanted when I first started creating content for, tutorials and stuff like that on Instagram, and if I would have gotten everything that I wanted, would I have started the podcast? I don't know, because I might have been complacent and I might have been happy in that short form, short video world. So everything that we go through around money is to push us to look closer, to look deeper, right? And it is really fear that we need to conquer. It is not money that we need to conquer, it's fear. Fear always needs something on which to feed in the mind, and fear has a complete feast on money because money is really become the symbolic charge behind our survival, our stability, our possibility to do what we want to in this lifetime. And the fear of failure, that feeling of failure within your body is intimately linked to money. And so now is a good time to get good at this because If you have nothing to lose, great. It's still pretty hard because you're always thinking, oh, if I just had a little bit more, then I would pay attention and then I would do all of this work. But since I have nothing right now to work with, what am I left to do? And it's funny because then once you do have something to work with, you're like, holy shit, I got a lot to lose. Like fear, stress. Like now I've got a lot to lose. And it's because if you don't do the work earlier on, how can you ever expect it to be different down the road? Because money is an amplifier. Money is an amplifier. And I know I keep saying that we're going to talk about that in the episode. We're going to talk about that as well, because this outlook that you cultivate now, it carries over. And that outlook that you have, that's the real abundance. That ability to understand, to tap in to, and to know your infinite abundant nature and not think that that sounds like the cheesiest thing that you've ever heard because you've experienced it in some way. That that is what I'm hoping you get out of this episode. So before we get into making money by mistake and what all that means, I sponsor my own episodes right now, and I want to share with you something that I have going on that makes me very excited. The number one thing is that I have an upcoming retreat in Costa Rica, January 25th through 29th. If you enjoy what I'm sharing on this podcast and you would like to come and you would like to practice with us in person and also sit on the beach in this incredibly beautiful location, remove from distractions and deep dive into these kinds of topics, I will leave the link for you in the show notes. And secondly, while you're on the website, I also have a mailing list, so you can sign up at any time for that, and you'll be part of the monthly newsletters that I send out, which otherwise you will not see. So if you're not sick of hearing my words and my ideas, sign up for the newsletter as well on my website. And finally, please, if you have not already done so, take a moment to subscribe to my podcast and to drop me a rating and to share this episode, whether that's sharing it on social media or just simply sending it to another friend of yours that you feel like it would resonate with. I love when people send me podcasts, by the way. It's a language of love for me because I am never going out there searching for new things to listen to. Like I want something that is peer reviewed. I want something that somebody who knows me says like, "Hey, I think that you would vibe with this." So if you can do that, that would be amazing. That is really currently the only form of support that I'm asking for in exchange for this podcast. So that would be fabulous. And now back to our show on money. Okay, making money by mistake is something that you could say, well, that sounds like luck. That sounds like you just found a penny on the ground and pick it up, and all day long you'll have good luck, something like that. But it's not. It's really when preparation is meeting opportunity, and it's walking from miracle to miracle in your life and also being the source of the miracle for other people. So it's not just like, oh, like let's bring all the miracles to me. It's also recognizing your role in being that miracle for other people. Do you ever have that experience where you realize that you've been the manifestation for somebody else, whether it was something that you randomly gave to them, a compliment that you gave to them, a laugh, a coincidence, a green light, and that person is just in awe because they've just experienced this feeling of like, wow, this is exactly what I was looking for. And here you are, like here you've brought this to me in some way. I enjoy being somebody else's manifestation as much as I enjoy seeing my own manifestations pop up. It's really, really satisfying. So, a major lesson about making money by mistake is that it probably won't come in the form exactly that you were thinking that it would. And it also comes when you have a strong purpose. When you have a purpose, when you have a need, when you have a mission, a true mission, rather than it being about hidden secret agendas, the real purpose and the real need for the funds makes them appear. The first time that I realized this was happening in my life, and I think back now, of course, I could have thought about the scholarships and things like that that I got to go to school, but the biggest, most, I would say, clear example, the clearest example of this was when I got back from studying abroad in Ecuador. And that is where I met my husband, my now husband, Simón. And if you don't know that whole story, just in short, we had to go through this immigration process, and it was like 90 Day Fiance. If you've ever seen the show, that was literally what we did, 90 Day Fiance. And it was this whole complex process. And at the same time, I was also really wanting to go back and to visit him in Ecuador. And I was running into this issue because I was a student, and I was like, I don't know how, but obviously, like, in the face of true love, I just was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to figure out a way. I'm going to figure out a way to pay all of this immigration stuff, and I'm going to figure out a way to get back to this country to visit my love. And I was working on the farm at the time during the summers when I was in college. And we'd always have these company events on the weekends. So the time during the week was like field labor, and then the time on the weekends was company events. And it was great because I could literally work if I wanted to work 7 days a week, I could. At one of the particular events that we had on the weekend, there was a company there that was a Spanish company. It was an engineering firm. And basically, I heard them speaking Spanish, and I walked up to them and I was like flexing my newly acquired Spanish fluency. And I started speaking to them, and they were like, hey, we are actually looking for somebody to teach English. Like, would you be interested? Sure. I thought, okay, this is great. I'm get in contact with them. And I remember there was this moment I was going to have a phone call with the company, and I was going to tell them my rate, and I had Googled about it, and I was like, I think I'm going to say $35 an hour. Like, it's just like, oh, it felt like a lot of money, compared to my $13 an hour on the farm. And so I hit them with this, like, I know it's a lot, but 35 because I need to prepare and this and that. And the woman just gives me silence on the phone. And I'm waiting there, and inside I'm like, oh gosh, was that too much, And then she goes, actually, that's really low. That's a really low rate. How about 65? And I was like, sure, yes, that'll be just fine. No problem at all. Sounds great to me. And then she says, and we're going to pay you that for your drive time and for your preparation time. When I hung up the phone call, I was jumping up and down, like nearly hitting my head on the ceiling. I was just so excited because overnight from literally like I think 2 or 3 days later, I was suddenly getting a check for about $1,000 every 2 weeks. And that was it. That was exactly what I needed to fund everything that I needed to do. And the funniest thing is that once all of that was taken care of, and once Simone was here with me in the United States, that job, it just shriveled up and disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. It was like one day to the next, they were like, hey, our financial department has just reviewed the budget, and, we don't have budget for this. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you had budget for it for the 9 months that you had budget for it, because it's a lot. And then it was just gone. It was just poof, gone. They're just the way that it had arrived. And I usually don't tell other people's stories on this podcast, but in this case, I want to tell you a little bit of the story of my husband, Simón. And this is actually because it's already been told in the interview that I did with him a long time ago. It's on the beauty of hitting rock bottom. So if you just search rock bottom within the podcast, you'll be able to find that if you want to hear it from him as well. And soon you're going to be able to hear it from him in another format, which I'm excited to share with you guys when it is time. But this sort of thing happens to Simón all the time. His case is that he left his home country of Venezuela with $14 in his pocket, and he arrived in Ecuador, and he went through a series of just crazy trials and times of tantalizing luck and extreme hardship all at the same time. And where I met him, he was working at this juice stand, and this is a magical little juice stand in the middle of the big city park in Quito. If you've ever been to Quito, Ecuador, it's Parque La Carolina. It's a great place to go and visit if you are visiting the city. And there were various occasions where he would get these sort of like lofty tips and gifts as if by magic out of the blue. I mean, on one occasion, $400 cash, where the person didn't even really show it to them, just like folded it up really small, and he realized later how much it was. And that's more than a month's wage, by the way, of what he was earning. That's more than a month's minimum wage in that country. To kind of paint the picture of how impossible that seemed, when I met him, he had a mattress on the floor. He always wore the same pair of jeans with this endearing little actual rip. And honestly, I cried a lot when the time came when he started replacing all of those sort of things, because I knew it was just the end of an era. And but at the same time, like, I that's the him that I fell in love with, and it's crazy to look back on and think that that was the reality just a few years ago. But I learned a lot in my outlook on money from him, because he has known what it's like to have absolutely nothing and nothing to fall back on several times in his life. And he's also grown exponentially in his success. And so he's been one of my greatest teachers about money. I would say, actually, my greatest teacher overall about money. And so I really want to share this little something that he wrote. So I'm going to share his words actually in this podcast in this way for the first time. But he wrote this about how giving can be the actual strong purpose of having money in your hands, just the power behind the giving, essentially. So let me just read it before I I over explain about it. But he wrote, "Giving can be seen as an act of rebellion. It goes against the principle of saving, of holding on, against the values society teaches us. But giving is also an act that turns us into magicians. Magicians surprise us. They amaze us. They make us laugh. They expand our minds, and they make us believe in the inexplicable, in miracles. I truly believe life is far more beautiful when we believe in magic. And if it gives us even the slightest bit of room, life becomes even more meaningful when we become the magician. If becoming a magician or believing in magic means rebelling against the principles of society, then consider me the leader of that rebellion. We can all become magicians and be the person that made the unthinkable miracle happen for somebody, big or small. This means tipping the super kind young man in the Taco Bell drive-thru when he is not expecting it, to the point that it almost brings him to tears, because these things, quote unquote, don't happen. When in fact, they are happening all the time, every day. All we need to understand is that to be a magician, we need to believe in magic. So, do you believe in magic? Because I do. It's purpose. It's purpose. It's a real mission. It's not just a vision board. The number of times, y'all, that I've put some kind of number, financial or of another kind, on a vision board and then felt entirely defeated by it and felt like shit because I didn't reach it, because it was some big lofty moonshot number that looked like on paper would bring success, is a lot of times. I'm sure that we've all done this, and there's times where you put a number and then you get it too. I mean, that happens, but the real presence within you knows that it wants to bring you a feeling, not a number. It wants to bring you a feeling. And that number will become whatever is needed in order to make that feeling happen. Abundance and true abundance is not just saying that I'm not going to look. Like, I'm not going to look then at any numbers. I'm going to turn a blind eye and I'm going to pretend that I don't have to think about any of these things. True abundance is looking what's going on in your finances directly in the eye and taking your power back from it. And that is not the easiest thing to do, to get everything organized, to know, exactly what's going on. And that has been a huge part of my journey this year. So I'm not coming to you with this, like, you must, bad person, get in order with your finances, right? It's not something that happens from one day to the next, but taking that one tiny step, watching that one video, figuring out how to set up this one particular part of your flow, get organized, You are an infinite being, and you created this human game to play with the experience of lack, to play with what it would be like to forget your true nature. And if that feels far out and you don't believe that, that's okay. But just imagine that. What if you were here to experience what it feels like to have lack? Money is the perfect indicator of that. So, in that case, why do you think you would have created the current situation that you have? Why do you think it's necessary for you to feel lack in certain areas of your life right now? And once you learn the lesson that lack has for you, the funny thing about it is that it generally goes away and something new comes up so you can learn and evolve in a different way. It's that age-old saying of when you finally learned a lesson is when it goes away. And until then, it's repeating for you. Why? Why does that happen? And I'm not giving any answers and I'm not telling you what to believe here, but I'm just saying, like, to take a little bit of time here and think about, why would it be that I'm experiencing the current situation that I'm experiencing? Why is it that when I look at what's going on, I feel that my chest is like tight and I can't breathe, or my stomach churns, or I feel butterflies of excitement? Why? And just to sit with that a little bit, because the more that you can look that right in the eye and you can feel those feelings and you can learn those lessons, power comes pouring back to you, because you do realize that you are in control. And whether or not that is a direct control that you perceive, I talked a little bit in a couple prior episodes about this idea of applying something called the process, which comes from a book called Busting Loose from the Money Game. And this book is really not about money in a lot of ways. And this book is very far out there, but I'm telling you the title in case you want to go for it and you want to look at it. You also might think I'm absolutely insane if you read that book, but I also think that I'm a little bit insane sometimes. However, there's this really useful tool that the author describes called the process. And so the process is as such that in your journey towards looking money in the eye, towards looking at your situation in the eye, not turning a blind eye and, swipe away because I'm abundant, right? No, no, no. That's hiding from the fear. Looking at the fear in the eye in whatever way that appears for you. And then you feel into that entirely. Like, you let all of the emotions, the more that you can feel, the more the power is going to return to you. So each and every time you try to feel a little bit more, at first, sometimes it feels like you can't feel anything and you're like, it's not working, because you're not even open to it yet. That was my situation, truly. And so as you go deeper into this, right when you're in the midst of the intensity of the feeling, remind yourself of your true nature. Remind yourself that you're here to experience this human condition, that you're here to play this game, and that everything here, whether or not it makes sense, you can see it in the long run. It's teaching you. You're in the school of life. Like this is a school, y'all. I think we've established that in many ways. And so when you can look at it in that way, you can take a little bit of the power back and say like this isn't something that's here just out to get me. And you start to just feel a little bit of the fear coming back in releasing its grip on you. Like when you can get really clear on a fear and you look it straight into the eye instead of running from the fear, and you run at the fear starts to run from you. That's the idea of this, right? So whatever you believe to be true, I am the infinite presence of God. I don't know what you believe that you are, but let's try to find the most empowering part of you. And you shine it right back at that. And you say, you know what? I am taking back the power over this. And you start to feel it flowing back to you. And as you feel it flowing back to you, you experience the wow fact. You experience the wow fact of how incredible is it that I can feel all of these feelings? How incredible is it that I live in this world that's organized by numbers moving around and things that I can't even see? How incredible is it that I live in a world in which I have the opportunity to purchase this or to pay this in exchange for receiving this? And you just end with this appreciation, essentially. I love the word appreciation here because what you appreciate appreciates. If you know the that financial aspect of the word appreciates, it's no mistake. It's no coincidence. And something that I've been loving recently is giving a new set of vocabulary using this word appreciate to be a constant reminder of what's really going on here when I pay something or I receive a bill. And I've been implementing this vocabulary of request for appreciation when I look at it. And so that's what I do. If I get a bill at a restaurant, I go down line by line, and usually something that would be a tendency for me would be to like kind of black out and not even remember what exactly the price was on the bill because of the distraction, I guess, that I would have in that moment. And that's not to say, right, that if that's happening to you, that it's because of fear or something like that. I don't even really think it was that case for me, but it was a lack of presence for the exchange that was happening in that moment because of the fact that everything is virtual and on credit cards. I think when we had money in our hands, you feel it a little bit more. You know, you feel the transfer and the energy exchange, as people refer to it a lot. But I love this idea of request for appreciation, or if I'm paying, I am giving appreciation, or I am appreciating in that moment. And so I've been slowing down and I've been looking line by line. Let's say if I'm at a sushi restaurant and I look at it and I go, "Oh, seaweed salad. Yes, that was really good. Oh, this roll. Ah, that one was not my favorite, you know." But how crazy is it and cool is it that I had the choice and I had the possibility and I picked that, and that was in the infinite possibilities in this universe, you know. Sounds far out. I know it sounds far out, but hang with me. And I just go line by line, and then I look around the restaurant, and then I look at the person across from me, and I just feel a sense of appreciation like, wow, what a cool human experience this was. I'd love to do it again sometime, you know? I am appreciating this, like more where this came from, please. And thank you as I fulfill the request from for appreciation. So, that's a little bit about money going out, you know, and the flow of money outwards. And to talk a little bit about the flow of money inwards, making money by mistake is about experiencing abundance in ways that you least expect. It's about not being too proud to let somebody help you. You know, there's great joy that we all take from being able to help each other. And that is part of the plan. It's also the tiny gifts that you receive that might really be nothing, quote unquote, to somebody else, but to you, it is everything that you needed in that moment in order to continue. And it's in not being so proud that you want the money to come in this particular way in exchange for the art that you've created or this thing that you're doing so that you can know and that you can prove the point that you are good enough or that what you are doing is good enough. Eh, Not going to work that way. It is probably not going to work that way. And it's very frustrating. And I've hit this many times where it's like, well, I want to make the money in this way so I can prove to myself that I can do it. And when you look at it, it's like, well, maybe what this is trying to teach you is that you cannot rely on external validation for what it is that you are doing. It feels like a big, hefty lift sometimes to dump all of this responsibility onto your art form. Like, well, my art form or this thing that I really love and I'm super passionate about must be the source of my abundance because it may eventually evolve into that. And I almost guarantee that it will. But in the beginning, you're going to suffocate the you're going to suffocate it. You're going to suffocate it right there because being in abundance is being in a state of expansion rather than contraction. Expansion is multiplying, possibilities filled. There's enough for all. There's more where that came from. That's one of my favorite phrases when I'm running up into a moment that I'm having a difficult time getting into a state of expansion because something is really important to me and I don't want to mess it up. And then it feels heartbreaking when it doesn't go as planned. It's like, oh, well, that opportunity or that money came to me in that way. There's more where that came from. I know and I trust that this is actually a good sign that I received this. And I know that I am going to have more opportunities exactly like this. Contraction, on the other hand, is putting up a fence to try to prevent leakages of what is yours. Expansion is not at all just letting money roam free without caring about it or being careless about it. It's a feeling of awe for what it symbolically represents and treasuring the fact that it represents opportunity. Contraction is trying to anticipate and control these opportunities for money and how they come about that are ultimately things that you cannot control. In the final part of this podcast, I want to talk about giving and giving as an art form of abundance. In a couple prior episodes, I've been speaking to giving, and giving as much as you can because there is great glory in the giving. And at first we have difficulty trusting in that. We really, really do. But this is where this concept of divine pride that I spoke to in the podcast on how to teach yoga in a meaningful way. And divine pride is that only you and the gods will know what you've done, across the cosmos, not even just amongst your friends and your family and deep within you, but across the entire cosmos, will you be known as a giver or will you be known as a taker? And the more that you can be known as a giver, you create and you influence more and more people around you to awaken to that same thing. And I realize it's because this feels so good because it's actually incredibly energy giving to live in that way. Whereas when you live in the opposite way, the expectations way of like, what am I going to get? What is my value? What am I getting out of this? Is this a good use of my time? Is this a good use of my money? That's a hard game to play because life is just constantly like, pshoo, 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 lessons, 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 learn. And when you can flip the script and you can try to see like how could I actually be the greatest light for all those around me, you realize that you have an immense amount of energy that just feels like it comes out of nowhere. And I wrote something about this. If you can go through life showing each and every person you meet that things can be different than they believe, that the unexpected can always happen and it is always happening, you will inject a dose of magic into a world that is starving for magic. If you can surprise people for the sake of seeing their unexpected smile, for nothing other than to give them a what are the chances story of awe to tell at the table at dinner, you are the real winner. If you can give a tip at Taco Bell for the person who is talking kindly to you, if you can give a compliment to the teacher whose words of wisdom touched your soul, if you can tell someone you admire how inspired you have been by who they are, if you can see some sliver of beauty in everyone you meet, and if you can tell them so, and if you can see someone's potential and point to it with open arms that make them feel worthy of all the wonders the world has to offer, if you can do that, you have already won. You will have so much fun in this life because you will have breathed a bit of magic into the lives of all those you've touched without them ever knowing how or when you did it. Then you will realize that it was never about you or proving anything about yourself, but it was about proving something about the treat that is life through each and every heartbeat that is yours. So you may see that we both wrote about tipping at Taco Bell because it's interesting, this whole conversation of money, because when we were in the drive-through, the attendant was asking us about our car and he really liked our car and he was like, "What year is it?" And we're talking to him about it and he's like, "Oh yeah, that'd be nice." And we're like, "Oh yeah, like we're hoping that you get one, you know?" And he was like, I think it's too much for me, but like maybe in another lifetime," sort of comment. And we did end up tipping him. And after that, we were talking, and Simón says to me, and he goes, "Wouldn't it be so cool to be that rich that in that moment that he says that, you could say, 'Which one is your car right now? Okay, like, give me your keys. You can take our keys, and you can just have this car.'" And I smiled at him and I'm like, "I believe that you will be able to do that one day. And I believe that you will, because if you weren't the kind of person who would tip now already with what you have, there's no way that you would ever give to that extent." And this touches on the point that if you don't feel like what you have now is enough or it's not enough, it's not worth appreciating, then it's never really going to feel like it's enough. And I know that's a really hard thing to say, and that's kind of an aggressive thing to say, but I believe that when we look at the example of people who do have the kind of financial numbers that we long to have, and we still don't see often that they maybe are as generous as we want them to be, then we start to touch on the root of this problem. And we understand kind of once and for all that generosity is not tied to income, it's tied to you. And so I wrote this one other thing that I want to share with you, which is that we feel shocked and we feel appalled by the behavior of those in charge, of the rich, of the people who have more than what we have. But what's going on up there with them is an amplification of what's going on down here. People taking advantage of things because they can, people wanting more because they never feel good enough, people trying to prove a point. What's going on up there is an amplification of the faults we see everywhere, because money is an amplifier of who you are. The problems of greed and thinking it's not up to me, the problems of cutting corners, hurting others, lying, cheating them because who cares, stealing from who we demonize as a means of feeling empowered, taking more than our share, wasting carelessly, are not unique to those we feel anger towards up there. They are within us. As within, so without. As above, so below. The best way to change the world is to change that which is right in front of you. That's the only way to know that you'll send a ripple effect out across the cosmos. That's how you feel the change, by feeling it deep within you first. And if you don't think that you can change the world today, you never will. If the power, the influence, the money, the opportunities that you have today are not enough, you will never feel like they are enough. It will always feel just over that next hill, and you will always be waiting until the moment is right to do something, distracting yourself in the meantime, because who are you to change the world? What difference does it make, anyways? And yet, you wonder why, at the top, they still don't realize what harm they are doing by falling prey to the most glamorously addictive distractions the world has to offer. Change can only start now, here, where you are, with what you have, because we've seen what happens when we wait until later. All right, moving on, and we're almost done, but I've got two additional pieces here. And if you're watching the video, you're probably like, what just happened? Because I had a half outfit change. I've like lived an entire life between when we were just talking a moment ago and now when we are talking, because the fire alarms went off during my podcast, and then I was late to go and teach, and I taught a class, and I wrote some things, and I did some things, and I did some other work, and now I'm back here. And you know, it's funny because this next point that I was planning to share with you is on how money is really a feeling, and what you want from money is a particular feeling. And I have been feeling all of the feelings today, which I will spare you from. Maybe I'll save that for next week. But it's true, Think about this. If some part of you clicked play on this episode beyond that, you just enjoy chatting with me and hearing what I have to say. But some part of you clicked this episode because you either want more money, you want to change something about the way that you are currently managing your money, or you want something different in terms of your finance and your understanding of abundance and how it feels to give and how it feels to spend money, because you can have all the money in the world, and if you can't enjoy spending it, then you're still going to be living with lack in a lot of ways. And so, what do you long for by wanting more money or by wanting this change? What would you do with it? You know, what would you do with more money? And really think about it and come up with something really specific. And I'm going to give you my specific example. And I'm jumping back into this to be incredibly vulnerable. I was thinking about if I wanted to share this example or not with you, but I am going to. And I'm sharing this also in the context that if you listen to my podcast and you know that I have family currently living in Venezuela, I try to also shed some light on that situation, because a lot of people don't even know, what the reality of that particular country is in this particular moment. My example that often come back to when I think about why I would like to have more money is to help Simone's family and to be able to do fun things with them and help them escape from the reality that they're living in day to day, and at the risk of oversharing personal information. But it is really an important part of our reality, is that they are dependent on us 100%. And so there's a deep part of us in everything that we do that is thinking about how we could give them a better life, kind of like I imagine one might think about that for their children. I don't know, I don't have children, but I imagine that's how you would feel. The thing that I want you to do, no matter what your example is to do that thing at least a little bit right now. Right now. To do just a little bit. Give yourself that feeling just a little bit. And so what I'm asking you to do in this little mental exercise is to get clear on the feelings that you want. And this might not be the most, I don't know, selfless things right at first. It could be a lot of to feel secure, to feel like you can show somebody that you are successful, to prove a point. I felt that a lot. And thank God that's one of the things that I feel like I've freed myself from, because that one is very, very challenging. And often, when you feel like your goal is to prove something to somebody else who doesn't approve of you or doesn't think that you are successful or doesn't think that you can do it or hurt you in some way or put you down, the approval that you're seeking for is really your own. You are seeking often your own approval in those moments. And when you realize that, it can be the greatest freedom because generally speaking, nobody else is thinking about you or your finances as much as you are, unless they're a bad friend or they're trying to get something out of you, which in which case then you don't probably care what they think anyways. And I know it's hard not to care what other people think, but at least make sure you with you are on a good page regarding that you're giving yourself the approval that you've been seeking in the money and the numbers and other people's opinions of what you're doing and what you have. So try to go to the root of it. Is it to live out your wildest dreams? What is it? What experiences is and what is behind that? And just go back another layer and try to get down deep into it. And ask yourself, once you have this list, I think this is a great option to write this down, to make an actual list, circle the things that feel the most true and the most intense for you, and then try to get to the feelings behind that and do that until you just feel like you've run all the way down right into the heart of it, right into the root of it. And it's sneaky. It's usually a lot deeper than you think that it is. And ask yourself, what am I lacking? What am I really lacking? Because I don't think it's money. It's not money that you're really lacking. And the money can help. I'm not here to say like money can never bring happiness. In certain ways, absolutely, because it gives you possibilities and it helps you on missions that are incredibly enriching and incredibly fulfilling, whether that's a mission for something that is your own joy or something for somebody else's joy. But what is preventing you from feeling this feeling that you so long for, that you crave right now? What's really getting in the way of it? And what I want you to do is to commit, like I just mentioned, to giving yourself at least a sliver of that feeling now. I'm not saying to, indulge in the whole pie, go out and buy a Lamborghini. I don't know. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you are craving, for example, the feeling of freedom, stop what you are doing. Go outside and walk barefoot in the grass as a means of protest by just interrupting the pattern and realizing right now that everything that you're doing is a choice and that you have ultimate freedom. And what a beautiful thing it is. It's an act of rebellion and a moment to prove a point to yourself. If the feeling that you're longing for is to help somebody or to help people in general, to be a light for people and to just be exploding with generosity deep from within your heart, then send a friend 20 bucks to get lunch or send them $5 to get a coffee if they're in part of the world where you can still get a coffee for under $5. But if it's not any of those things, if it is really that feeling of safety and that feeling of security and that feeling of fear, that deep human wound that is the fear for our survival, for our existence essentially, and for making it meaningful while we're here, maybe you take one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly and you breathe 3 times slow, just that, and you just think about the breath. And if anything else comes in and interrupts that, then you start over again. And you do that until you can master those 3 deep rounds of breath. And you will have had an experience in which, for a moment at least, you remembered something more than the fear. You remembered maybe a bit of love. And as you go from living from fear to living with love, number one, monetarily, you will probably magnetize things that you didn't know that you should dream that you should magnetize. And that part of you won't even be thinking that way. That's the greatest irony of it all. So take that moment. Do that small thing. Do not leave the sight of this inspiration, this little dose of motivation, without taking one tiny, tangible step. Because we know that breakthroughs are built in these little micro steps. As you give yourself a taste of that feeling, you start to rewire those beliefs that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. But maybe I can have that. Maybe I don't have to have the money, then do the thing, and then be happy. Maybe I can be happy, do the thing, and then eventually realize that I have the money or I've had enough all along. The abundance is there. The abundance is all around you. It is all around us. But the question is, are you a match for it? In the way that you are believing, in the way that you are acting, and your willingness to give, and your willingness to crack the heart wide open that is surrounded and suffocated with this fear. Our brains, they filter out 99% of everything that we're taking in, all of the information and all of the stuff going on around us. 99% of it does not really ever reach our conscious mind. And you might say that that sounds insane, but the even more insane part of it is that the 1% or so that does make its way through, the brain is selecting the things that it feels like are already a match for you, that reaffirm your beliefs and who you are. Your mind is looking for ways to reaffirm your current reality and reaffirm your current beliefs. So, what are you missing in the other 99%? A whole hell of a lot. That's what I can say. And this is inattentional blindness. This is the most classic example when your friend gets a new car and then suddenly you see that car everywhere because now you're looking for that car. And so don't choose a car if you're not a car person. Choose something else. Choose a feather, choose a color, choose anything and try this out. Set the intention of looking for that thing and set the intention that I will see this thing because it's a very common thing, and you will see that it has been there all along. It has been there all along. And so, even by just sitting today and taking the time to dive into your beliefs on money and your beliefs on giving and your beliefs on abundance, real abundance, you've began to tip the scale in a new direction. You have began to move through life in a different way. You've began to either have the bud or the seed of some new beliefs. And remember that the way that a seed grows is a magical process. You planted the seed, but do you go every single day to the garden and do you tell the seed and give it instructions on how to grow? No. You just continue to water it. You just continue to give it sunlight and you let it be. You don't dig it up every 10 minutes and check on it and see if it's working. Is it working? Am I getting more abundance? Is it working? Is it working? Let it be, trust a little bit. And that's actually what I want to end with is they taught us to make it worth it, as if we could squeeze it like a sponge and somehow if we could just get that one last drop, then it would be worth it. If we can milk it for all it gives, take all that's laid out simply because it's there, go first for fear of what will be left if we go last. If we could fill our basket fuller, we could fill ourselves with something heavier than our expectations, and we could feel fulfilled. But why do we gather with an urgency and distrust that ensures we'll never find what we hunger to hold? And even though we watch the day turn to night and night to day, why do we distrust what happens when we pour it all away? Pour it slow and controlled like we mean it, dancing in the trust and mystery as we pour it all back, the milk to the grass, the last drop of the sponge to the glass, just for a moment. What happens when we let it all fall? What do we have left when we have nothing at all? Trust. Sweet and sacred trust, magic evoking trust, trust that feels like quiet grace, cycles of trying times and tantalizing luck. Trust is all that in this life to hold we must. Trust is what makes it worth it. Whew, what an episode. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the episode. Go forth with trust. I believe in you, as always. And if, before we get to the emoji of the day, you are feeling inspired, if you could take a moment to please subscribe, drop me a rating, share this episode with somebody else who may resonate with these somewhat hard to have conversations on money and abundance. And maybe I will see you in person in Montezuma, Costa Rica in January for my upcoming retreat. The emoji of the day is definitely going to be the money with wings because I do really truly love the idea of wings on money, and it feels very real and very relevant for this conversation. So if you are listening on Spotify, then drop that emoji in the comment section and I will catch you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao. If you enjoyed this episode of the Leadership and Yoga podcast, please take a moment to drop me a rating and subscribe. Also, if you're able to share this podcast with the world, it is greatly appreciated. Thank you.